I'm Logan Webb, and you're listening to TortureCast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the three-time world champion, San Francisco Giants. With hosts Chad King and Eric Nathanson. This is TortureCast.
It's Thursday, September 1st, 2022, and this is episode 262 of the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me today is Eric Nathanson. How you doing, man?
Doing great. 262. I don't know why it just jumped out at me. Like that's a hell of a high number. That's impressive. I love that we're still kicking, still doing this because I'm looking at silver linings because the Giants aren't providing any right now.
Yeah, I mean, baseball has a 162 game season, and we've exceeded that by 100 podcasts. So I think we're doing pretty well.
That's why that's why it stuck out of my head. 62 just always does.
I think that's what it was. You're right, Eric. I mean, this week, look, we've talked about it even starting 2 weeks ago that their chances were really slim. They needed to turn it around. Last week, Willie and I talked about it. We both said, they're done. It would take a miracle, and it would start with doing well in Minnesota and sweeping the Padres. Not only did they not even come close to that, they got swept by both teams. They have currently lost 7 in a row. Currently, could lose their 8th in a row. They're not mathematically done, but they're officially done now. In fact, they're now a distant 10.5 games out of the wild card, which I never thought that was going to happen, with 33 left to play. They're also tied. They're tied with Arizona, dude. I never thought that was going to happen. That is crazy. They're 7 games under 500, 61 and 68, and now their run differential has gotten into negative territory over the last 3 or 4 games, and they're now at a -5, which has been creeping because, of course, the San Diego series, they lost all 3 games by 1 run, but I'm not trying to make it sound closer than it really was, because in each of those games, the Giants were down by 3, 4, 5 runs and came storming back with late runs just to fall short. So it wasn't like they were hard fought back and forth kind of things. But they did lose all 3 games by 1 run. So, I mean, it's been very depressing. Definitely have not seen something like this for quite some time. This is the longest losing streak the Giants have had this year, and it's still continuing.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll through the years right now to find the last losing streak of 7 or more games.
Yeah, and this is just bad. This is just really, really bad. This team is in disarray. There have been some, statements, I guess, by certain people, including Logan Webb and others, that may be indicating there's no fire from this team, lack of effort, that kind of stuff. Obviously, Gabe Kapler doesn't publicly agree with that, and I don't think he will because he's not that kind of guy. But at the same time, I mean, look, I was at the game both the first 2 games against the Padres, and not that I can see the clubhouse all the time, not that I can be down on the field and talk to the players. There just didn't seem to be any fire in them. They just seemed to be going through the motions,
It's like they might have quit on Cap. And I found it interesting. The thing he did say about Logan Webb's comments is, I support that he's going to express himself as a player because he's a leader in this clubhouse. Whether or not he realizes it just yet, he is a leader. And I thought it was interesting that Cap was kind of trying to say, if Logan Webb wants to call out the team, maybe let him. But, it was a little too touchy-feely for me. I think Cap lost the clubhouse. I really do. I don't think that they are into what he's selling anymore. And they all know that they're having rough years. And that's why Crawford, we saw it yesterday. Crawford had 2 throwing errors. Was that yesterday? No, that was Tuesday when you were there. Yeah, Harry Potter night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had, and that's mental to me. You got your mean Mercedes playing first base over there. Don't throw balls in the dirt. Take your time, make the throw. You have a strong enough arm. Just be yourself. And even Crawford just seemed mentally not in it. So I think that's part of the vibe you were feeling by being at the ballpark is maybe the team just kind of has quit on Kapler at this point. And it makes you wonder what the plan is going forward. I mean, they're not going to get rid of Kapler at this point, but But Zaidi and Cap definitely need to have something up their sleeves in this offseason, because we did not expect to see the Giants 7 games under 500 to start September. I mean, they're never going to sniff 500 again. It's over. They're going to go from 107 wins to at least 80 or less this season. That's at least 27 less.
I really did think, even last week when we were talking about how they were toast, I still thought in my mind that, well, they can still finish 500 and maybe move on to next season and not, quote, build upon it, but they wouldn't call this year a disastrous season if you finish 500. It's not a disaster. It's just underperforming, right? And, like, for example, they had Sean Estes on. They did have him on this morning, but they were talking to Will Clark yesterday as I was driving to work. They do it every Wednesday with him on the Murph and Max show. And of course, he's my favorite player of all time, and he's a bit of a red ass and an old school mentality. So it's really fun to hear his opinions, because he doesn't hold back, and he's definitely not anti-Farhan. The way he thinks about baseball is very analytics, right? He thinks optional batting practice is BS and it should be mandatory, right? He thinks trying to bunt with 2 strikes is something that should never happen.
Stupid.
A lot of us think that too. He definitely understands some of the analytics. He doesn't poo-poo all of it, but he's like, there's something to be said at putting the right player in the right position at the right time based on their attitude and their kind of panache for delivering in the big moment, right? Not necessarily your splits against righty-lefties. He's like, throw those out the door when it's late in the game and you need a RBI single. Like, who cares if the guy's only hitting 200 off of lefties? If he always comes through in these situations or has that attitude, put him in. Or if you have a gut instinct, put him in. Or if you have someone in the bullpen who you think is going to be good for the situation to get a strikeout, put him in. Not just like, oh, well, he does this. He's like, look, it worked last year. It clearly is not working this year. And despite the fact that they've gone through a ton more injuries this year than last year, and that definitely is part of the calculus, there's just something else missing. And again, it's evident in all the body language, the 1-run losses, which is just so problematic this year. They're so bad in 1-run losses. But he did bring up one thing, and I remember, I don't have the quote in front of me, but you remember in Bull Durham when he said, like, the difference between a 250 and a 300 hitter is like 10 bunt singles or 10 singles or something. It was something to that effect, right? Yeah, that's a couple of bloops. It's a couple Texas leaguers. It's a couple this and that, right? It really doesn't make a big difference in your batting average. Well, it's the same. Will Clark was actually trying to say that in baseball. He's like, I think everyone needs to understand that we all thought this team was going to win 90 to 95 games, but the difference between 90 wins and 80 wins is not as big as you think. He's like, it's only 10 wins over 162 games. And he's like, that's easily encapsulated in a couple of bad bounces and a couple of bad decisions and a couple of errors. And suddenly, boom, it's a 10-game swing. So he said, to the fans, basically, he was saying, I don't think this team is, I think last year's team performed better than they really were. The luck bounced their way. Everything went their way. Yeah. And he said, this year, I don't think the team is as bad as the record indicates. He's like, I think they're better. So he's like, it's not all doom and gloom, and this is Will Clark, right? He's usually like, yeah, they suck, but he was trying to explain, like, this team is definitely going through a bad spot. Every team does, but he's like, it's really exacerbated right now. And again, I think you could be onto something. I think Cap might have lost part of the clubhouse. And I think the other issue is just the revolving door. And like, they have these new guys up all the time. I'm looking up their numbers going, who the heck is this? I mean, maybe it's a good thing the Giants finally put their names on the backs of their jerseys again.
I agree. It's because of Farhan.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I mean, we don't even have to go through the transactions this week, but you look at it again, and they did another trade with the Astros. They got this, old catcher Knapp. They got from the Bay Area. They're just doing things every other day, and they seem like microtransactions. And I think it was successful last year. It's just not working out this year. And I tell you what, Eric, I've never really been super on the bandwagon of making the massive free agent splash. I've always welcomed it if it was the right situation, but I don't want a 10-year A-Rod contract, right? I don't want anything like that. I don't want another Zito contract. They got to do something like that this offseason, just for psychological purposes. Because, okay, let's say they sign Aaron Judge to 10-year, $400 million. I'm just throwing those numbers out for fun, right? Okay. And he gets hurt in year 2 and never plays again. It's the worst contract in Giants history. Well, they tried. They did what everyone was clamoring to do, right?
I have no problem with that.
So, I mean, that's the other side of the coin, and it's like, I know that's what Farhan wants to avoid. He's been explicit about it. He's like, he doesn't want to get into these albatross back-ended contracts where they don't serve any value because he doesn't want to get trapped in that situation. I understand it financially, but I think they're looking at the other side of the coin right now. Is that when you nickel and dime everything and try to find every diamond in the rough you can and platoon every position you can, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It just doesn't seem to be working.
Exactly. Great analogy.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I was on the bandwagon last year, and we all said in Farhan we trust, and I still trust him, but I trust him to adapt. I trust him to start making different decisions based on the results this year.
I have to wonder. I mean, he's probably handcuffed by ownership right now. They probably do want to stay on a certain payroll at the moment.
Yeah.
And those shackles need to come off in the offseason. That's what needs to happen. All these fringe guys that they keep trying to play with, well, they're fringe guys for a reason. There's a reason Luis Gonzalez was a fringe guy. There's a reason Yermin Mercedes. I don't mean to be singling out White Sox here, but there's a reason Yermin Mercedes was a fringe guy. There's a reason all these different guys can be had for the low cost that they've been had for. So Farhan, like you said, he needs to adapt. This has to be the offseason that they go after something. And we've talked about it. I don't care if you sign somebody for an 8-year deal and he performs for the first 5 years. I'm good with that. If it brings the Giants 2 titles in the next 5 years, I'm totally good with that. Let the back end of the contract deal with itself. And it's totally okay if Aaron Judge comes and dominates for 5 years and then slowly trails off. I mean, that's fine. If they get a pitcher, I know there's Correa is probably available too. If they get other pitchers, they can go after somebody. Farhan needs to make that splash. It's time. If they don't, and they continue running the team like this, the fans are just going to revolt next year. They really are. You saw the attendance. You were there the last 2 nights. These are division games, and there was nobody there. Harry Potter couldn't even bring people to the ballpark.
I was somewhat shocked. I know what the official attendance is. That's because they include all the season ticket holders and all the sold tickets. The actual butts in the seats on Monday and Tuesday night was just pathetic. I mean, it wasn't Oakland A's pathetic. It wasn't Candlestick back in the 90s pathetic, but it was pathetic for Oracle standards. It really was bad. I mean, the park was, it's 40,000, and it was under 50% capacity in terms of butts in the seats. So I don't know what the actual attendance was, but I had to imagine it was in the 15,000 plus or minus range. That's what I would guess. I could be a little off by that, but that's real problematic, especially like you said. It's kind of like their last gasp. If they swept the Padres, they'd be 4.5 back right now, and at least we'd be talking. Like it's possible. It's possible. It may not be likely, but it's possible. But yeah, now it's 100% over.
And they didn't show up. The fans didn't show up. They had no faith that this team would do anything. I mean, how boring is it? You were at games. Although I got to say, Tuesday was kind of entertaining with all the errors. But how boring are the Giants to watch right now? And fans don't want to pay money to go sit there and be bored for 3 hours. You can only see Mike Yastrzemski strike out or walk so many times. It gets frustrating after a while. And that's part of what it is not only do they need a big splash to get talent, they need to get butts in the seats. They really do, because they're a boring ass team, and I'm tired of watching. It's the same game I got home yesterday, in the middle of the game, it was like 4-0 Padres already, and I tweeted out the GIF like, really again? I mean, because it's just every day. It's just every single day. Giants are falling behind, and they're not scoring runs early. They go through their lineup not getting hit. Like it's happened like 5 times during this losing streak. I mean, not really, but still, it's a brutal losing streak too. The last time they lost 7 straight was 2019. Under Boch, and the last time they lost more than 7 straight was 2018, also obviously under Boch. They lost 11 straight starting on September 1st of 2018. So that was that September where they just went like 5-20 or something like that, and 5-25 in the last month or some crap like that. So
yeah, I remember.
That's what this team is, and that's what this team is going to border on now if they keep this up, because the schedule's not getting any easier. They're barely playing bad teams the rest of the way.
No, in fact, coming up, they got 3 against Philly, of course, who's in the wild card hunt, 3 at LA, who apparently they can never beat ever again. They currently have lost 8 in a row to the Dodgers, 2 4-game sweeps at home and home. They have a doubleheader in Milwaukee, who's trying to fight with the Padres to get that last wild card spot, and then they have 3 at Chicago, but it's at Chicago, which is never an easy place to play. So you're right. I mean, they got a bunch of tough games coming up. They still got more against the Dodgers in September, so it doesn't get easier. Again, not that the wild card is even in relevant discussion, but you want this team to at least finish, if they could, above 500 for the month. I don't know, do something like 17 and 13 or something for the month.
Right, please, just anything. Break a little over even. Like, seem like there's something there.
Just a little life.
That Cubs series, it's kind of nice. The 49ers play the Bears at noon Central, so 10 o'clock Pacific on Sunday, September 11th. And then the Giants play the Cubs that night. It's now a night game on ESPN at Wrigley. So there are fans of both teams that are going to end up double dipping. So I think you're going to see a really raucous crowd for that Cubs-Giants Sunday night game. Because honestly, Bears opening day, Chicagoans, we go nuts. And to lube up all day and then have the night game at Wrigley, it's going to be a fun time. Yeah, I think that's going to be, for me, the last highlight to look forward to.
Absolutely. When they announced that, I never seriously looked, but it did pop in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, that would be the ultimate quick road trip. I love Chicago. It's a fun city. But then to go watch a Niner game at Soldier Field and then go to the Wrigley Field after that, I was like, holy crap, I don't know if I could physically survive that, but
the history involved and everything. It's great.
That would be
such a fun double dip.
Yeah, I think it would definitely have to be a non-alcoholic endeavor, or at least hold off. Yeah, at least hold off till Wrigley, right? Susan Slusser was on KMBR after the game yesterday in the bunker with Tolbert and Copes, and they were talking to her about everything. A couple things I want to mention. One of them was, this team just seems to be lifeless, and of course she's around the team every day talking to them, and she said, she's like, from anonymous sources, people are just not. They feel like the team just doesn't have the fire right now. She says she can feel it in the body language and how everyone's talking. And she said, I talk to fans, I hear fans, they tweet at me all the time, and I know the fan base is frustrated. But, I mean, what do you do as a fan? Your only power is you just stop showing up to games. And, that's kind of what they're starting to do right now. Ownership's going to obviously take notice of it. And you're right, they hold the purse strings. They tell Farhan what he can spend and not spend. So it's not all on Farhan. I get that point. But it's Gabe Kapler seems to be a fairly even-keeled guy, but I always wonder, behind the scenes, is he not exposing his butthole to the sun because he's angry or something? What is he doing?
How does he get his anger out? Yesterday, Craw got tossed. And Cap could have gone out there and fired himself up. I mean, they're in the middle of a 6-game losing streak at that point. Get your ass tossed. Who cares?
Yeah, might as well.
He finally got tossed. Yeah, he finally got tossed one time earlier this season. And I think that was the first time as Giants manager. If he's not showing fire, I can see why the team wouldn't be showing fire. And it makes me wonder if, that again goes back to the Posey influence. How big of an influence was Posey in the clubhouse last season? What kind of leadership are they missing? And is that what Cap's hinting at when he's saying Webb is a leader when he doesn't even realize it just yet? That there are certain guys on the team that are supposed to be stepping up. I can't see it. I don't know. Posey makes a big difference though. Cap, he's got no fire in him. He's so, like you said, even keeled all the time. How can we expect the team to have fire in them?
Yeah. It's also bad when, I go to those 2 games and Willie and I were talking about it on Monday night. You just write down the lineup and here comes the Padres, right? I mean, 5-6 guys in their lineup. You're like, oh, he's really good. I want to see what he does. Oh, he's really good. I want to see what he does. Oh, he's really good. I want to see what he does. I mean, we're talking Drury, Bell, Machado, right? Soto. Obviously, Tatis normally would be there. Obviously, he's going to be gone till May of next year. They're loaded up. I was watching a little of the Mets-Dodgers game. Same thing. There's a star every other at-bat, right? And there's so much energy in the crowd. Granted, both teams are in the playoffs, and the Mets are all excited and all that stuff. And a lot of these games have these players that you want to see come up. I mean, back in the day, of course, we're waiting for Buster Posey or Madison Bumgarner pitch, or Tim Lincecum to come out, or Brian Wilson to close, right? Pence. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have not even a single person. Yes, there are 2 people not on the roster, but on this team from the 12 and 14 teams, but one of them might not ever play a baseball game in his life again, and we'll get to that in a second. And then Brandon Crawford, who obviously did have a career year last year, is not having that this year. He made those 2 errors. It's just unlike him. He's just not playing like Brandon Crawford, and he's going to be on this team next year as well. But that's probably going to be his last one. But no one's like waiting for Brandon Crawford to come up hitting 7th to go hit a home run. Like, that's not what we don't. We get excited about his defense and his stability on the team. And then, of course, I just was talking about Brandon Belt is whom I mentioned. Like, as of yesterday, I don't know if anything's come across the wire today. He was seeking multiple opinions about his knee. Susan Slusser was saying, yeah, if she were to bet on it, it's going to be season-ending surgery. But she said everyone's whispering and hoping it's not career-ending surgery, because apparently there's just nothing left in his knee. There's no cartilage. There's nothing there. And so she said it does sound like, and she said, I cannot confirm this, but it just seems like it's at a point where they have to have some sort of novel, new orthopedic approach to give him any chance of playing. You know, this isn't like going in and just going, oh, we're just going to clean out the knee. Oh, we're just going to get some irritation out of there. Yeah. He's done all that. He has nothing left. It's bone on bone. It's a serious issue. So, like, you know, they can't do a knee replacement and have you play Major League Baseball. So, yeah, she said if it's something, it's going to be something novel and new, and maybe it'll give him a chance. But it looks like this year is done, and they signed him to the arbitration deal of, the qualifying offer deal of $18 million this year. I mean, think about that. He was paid $18 million this year, and they're virtually nothing to show for it, right? So clearly, even if he has a good prognosis, if he has some miraculous knee surgery and everything, the Giants aren't going to sign him to anything close to that next year. So his days as a San Francisco Giant, I think, are probably over. And it's sad because every single year, we're like, if he could only stay healthy, he'd put up, these numbers, and just never freaking happened. Not even 1 year. So I think that's it. I think
has there ever been a Giants player? Has there ever been a Giants player with so much unfulfilled potential? I can't remember. I mean, we've had a lot of guys like Noah Lowry comes to mind. Yeah. We've had a lot of guys that came up and were really good, and you could see the talent in them. And I can't remember anybody like Belt, though, constantly getting injured year after year after year to derail every one of his seasons, just every single one of his seasons. He never could put it all together. No. And he's going to go down as that. The Belt Wars ended and no side won, because when he played, he showed flashes of brilliance. When he was injured, the people who didn't like Belt were like, haha, see, he's always injured. So it kind of ends in a wash at this point. And I'm with you. That's his last game in a Giants uniform. And I think it might be the end of the career. I heard some of the rumblings you're talking about from other people, and he'll probably end up moving to the 60-day DL soon too, to add roster spots for September to make it easier to get other guys on the 40-man to then get them onto the 28-man roster, since rosters expand today.
Yeah, I think that's what they're waiting for. They're just waiting to see, they're probably giving him some time to feel out those second opinions. And, there even could be a little, equation in there of like, well, maybe I need to address this with major surgery in the offseason, but I could see me not playing for the Giants or maybe even baseball ever again, but I really want to get on the field one last time. And maybe there's something they can do with rest and drugs and steroids and anti-inflammatories and braces to get him out there for one last game or series, And maybe they're waiting for that too. Maybe they're waiting for a prognosis so they could slap him on the 14-day or 15-day IL.
He doesn't seem that nostalgic type to me. Like I could see Belt possibly have moved on in his head in a sense already and be like, okay, this might be it for me as a Giant.
Yeah. I just maybe that's the inner fan hoping that we see him one more time, just to kind of put a bow on it. But
yeah, he might sign with like Texas or Houston, to be a DH next year if he feels like his knee can't handle it. But I think his Giants days are done. I could see him going back to his home state, but that's about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, no one knows the answer here. These are just, complete assumptions by the media and us. So it could be totally different. It could come out in a week and they're like, oh yeah, they're doing this procedure and he'll be fine, but I highly doubt it. That's not what everyone has been indicating. So
availability is not Belt's best ability.
Yeah. So, and the other thing was like even Tuesday night, so Monday night was pretty depressing in the press box. A lot of the reporters just seemed uninspired, talking about
the power
it
outage, man. What was up with the lights going out? Like, that had to have been one of the weirdest things to go through.
That was weird because it was probably in the second inning. It's not dark, obviously. It's not even quite dusk, but things are starting to dim a little bit. And my eyesight now, the presbyopia is kicking in. That's why I'm wearing glasses to read and all that. I need more light to read. So I'm looking out in the field, and I just, I've obviously been to the park enough, and we've all been to Major League Stadiums enough to know what light should look like. And even though the sun was still out, or there's still daylight, I'm like, it just looks dim. So I leaned over to Willie. I'm like, don't the lights look like it should be brighter on the field right now? He's all, yeah, kind of. I mean, maybe. I don't know. And then as the next inning or two went by, I was like, oh, it's definitely dim. And I kind of asked around, is anyone saying anything? And they're like, no. And then finally, it was, I think, whatever it was in the third inning, there was a reporter behind me, and she leaned over. She's all, yeah, I'm listening to the radio. They're finally talking about it. They're like, yeah, it's definitely dark. There's no doubt about it. And then it was an inning later. It was the fourth inning or whatever it was, where they finally we were watching it, and by then everybody in the press box is like, why are they playing? Like, it looks like a high school field. Like, it's so dim now, right? And then suddenly, boom, the umpires just get up and walk off the field. We're like, oh, okay. So they finally, put a delay on. People were confused, but it later came out. So Willie and I decided to walk around the park during the delay, and by the time we got to the outfield in the bleachers, then we saw all of the bullpens walk across the field into the clubhouses, and then we knew, oh man, this is definitely going to be a long delay if they pulled everyone into the clubhouse, right? That's not a short delay.
Let's go get beers.
Seriously, it ended up being like 45 minutes. All the food and beer lines were crazy long, We used our passes. We checked out the Gotham Club, which I had never been before. We went down to the boardwalk. He had never seen kind of the carnival games, the pitch speed, the batting cages, the skee ball, the basketball hoops, all for the kids there, So he got to see all that. It was really weird. And that was after the first inning delay where the umpire got hurt doing the splits on the slick grass. That was about a 20-plus minute delay. So all in all, we had more than an hour of delays. And so, to be honest, Willie and I had kids to get up in the morning, and he had something to get home to. We both left at the end of the sixth inning, and it was 10:15. It was ridiculous. Yeah. They still had three more innings, and by the time the game was over at like not that long before midnight, I was only like 20 minutes from home in my car listening to the game. So,
but that's the thing. If the Giants were in contention and good, there's no way you and Willie bail. Say they're fighting with San Diego for a playoff spot right now. You guys are like, well, screw it. I'll deal with the kids. I'll deal with being tired. Willie will be like, But because of that just totally goes to show what is happening with the fan base. You guys were like, okay, we've seen enough. This has been a long enough night.
Yeah, and it was 6-2, right? It was 6-2. Right. So
I totally relate. I think I fell asleep during that game. It was. Yeah, I did. I absolutely did. I passed out during that game. It was a long, like 4.5 hour game.
And then Tuesday was the Harry Potter night. Of course, I went with my family. We got our Harry Potter hats, which was cool. Same thing. They were down early. Those just error after error after error, and like my kids are like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "It's the Giants." And like we hear fans around just going, "This is getting old. You guys suck." It was just, and everyone was just so apathetic and just blah. And it was the same thing. Kids have school the next day or whatever, and it was I can't remember the exact score at the time. I think it was 4-1. And we stayed until the end of the seventh. So we missed the last two innings, but the kids wanted to check out the dugout store, so we did that. And then we had left when it was the top of the ninth, and we got out of there. So we missed Jock Peterson's late home run. But again, it was a minor consolation and nothing major that we missed. And, we got out of there, still got home really late for the kids and everything. So, yeah, the whole vibe around the park is not like what it was last year, and certainly not like in those championship years, but we have to acknowledge the fact that the Giants have been this bad before. I mean, like you just noted, some of those losing streaks not that long ago. They lost 98 games in 2017, I believe. They lost 98 games. So that was only 5 seasons ago, and it was all under Boch, right? So for all the good that Boch brought, I think fans have to realize that, they had some really crappy teams under Boch too, and no one was like calling for Boch's head at the time. obviously, 3 World Series rings gives you a lot
he's
of
just a lovable
slack.
character.
Yeah.
We're all like, yeah, whatever. I love you both.
But it's not his fault, right? Everyone's like, well, it's not his fault. It's the talent. But now it seems like with Cap, they're like, it's not the talent, it's Cap. And it's like, well, I don't know if we can say that because look at the talent. It's not good.
Yeah, it's really tough to judge. Like I get in Cap a lot. I had a lot of questions about Cap. I still have a lot of questions about Cap. I don't think he's the best in-game manager. But I will totally grant the point that he hasn't had talent to work with this year. He hasn't had anybody to work with. So I would be curious to see Cap back next season one more time because he is definitely coming back if they acquire some talent. If they acquire some talent and give him a bullpen to work with and he still kind of farts around, then it might be time to look somewhere else. But, if Cap can put it together, give him the chance to do so. You might as well. I mean, that's what he was hired for, and that's why Farhan and him supposedly work well together.
Yeah, it's look, Tony Lavella was just extended by the Diamondbacks,
Wow.
So I saw that and I was like, okay, well, the Diamondbacks think highly of a manager of a 7-game under 500 team, right where the Giants are now. But
they caught the Giants. They had to celebrate with something,
I think that's what it is. I think the Diamondbacks are getting appreciably better. I think we see it in their talent and their results. And now the fact that they're tied with the Giants seem to be appreciably getting worse. And so they do seem like they're headed in different directions. And I never would have thought that the Giants would even be close to the Diamondbacks this year. And now we're faced with the prospect that the Giants might finish in 4th place this year.
I think they're going to. D-backs, like you said.
Crazy.
They're tough. They are a tough team. I've watched a lot of D-backs games over the last couple months. They're a tough team to play. You talk about lineups to get through. We don't know the names, but these guys put in tough at bats. It's part of why those Padres games were so long. Is long pitch counts. Like Logan Webb faced 22 batters but threw 110 pitches. That's 5 pitches in at bat. That's a long game.
Yeah. His pitch count got up real quick. He was dominant. Obviously, he had to deal around errors, but he was pitching well until that one inning got him. But it was the first run he allowed. Or the only run he allowed was an unearned run anyway. It was frustrating to see him. Yeah, he had to exit so early because his pitch count was so high because, defense and other things. So
same thing happened on the other side, though. The Giants did it to Musgrove. That is one thing they've maintained throughout the season. As crappy as they've been, they've stayed patient at the plate. A few months ago we could say, well, their pitching sucks, but look at how good their offense is. We can't do that crap anymore. No. I mean, when Yaz is hitting like 201, the whole offense is just taking a nosedive. And that's where they're at. So hopefully September, maybe they'll bring up Ramos, maybe they'll get Villar, maybe get some good energy going into the clubhouse, because like you said, it's kind of dead in there. And maybe they can bring up some young kids and try to do something. I almost wish the roster is expanded to 40 again so that they could bring up like a handful of people instead of just 2 or 3. Because that's all they got now. I want Bart to get healthy. Bart, he's dealing with a concussion. I almost take it as a blessing. Now we're going to see how he bounces back from an injury after adjusting his swing and getting better. So is he going to regress to who he was at the beginning of the season, or is he going to be who he was in the second half of the season when he comes back from this concussion list?
Right.
So I think it's kind of a nice little test for him almost in season. Sucks that he got a concussion. I've had them. They're no fun, but
right.
At least it's a good test for him. And then I say bring up like Ramos and them, with Slater being out, you might as well.
Yeah. Now I do in this situation, because they have a lot of prospects, do miss the truly largely expanded rosters. Now we just have 2 that they can call up, but there are reasons for that under the new CBA. I get it.
Bochy's fault. He used to make 10 pitching changes in the last 3 innings.
Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. And it definitely, I do feel for the guys who, I think we've talked about this before when they made this change a couple of years ago, but it was more like, oh man, could you imagine if you were one of those precipice players or phenoms that might have got a cup of coffee in the expanded roster era, but now you'll never see the show because of they've reduced it. Like, I do feel sorry for some of those fringe guys that maybe will never get a look. Even if, in 2014, one prospect was part of that massive call-up in September, he got 1 at-bat or 1 play in the field, and he's like, I got it. Yep. And now that can't happen, right? You really have to be a true bona fide prospect. You can't be Bruce Bochy's son. when he was called up. Remember
Brett,
that?
He's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, way he makes Brett Bochy never makes it today, right? He got his tiny little spot on the Giants, and that was it. It was a flash, and he was gone. So, and there's been a lot of players like that. So you're gonna kind of cut down on that.
Buster might not have gotten called up in September 2009 if it was this kind of expansion at that time, on only bringing up 2 players. It's entirely possible that some of the stars that we know today might not have debuted until the next season as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, I do have to wrap this up, unfortunately. I've had an electrician here all day. That's kind of the brevity of the show, and he's done. And so I'm surprised he finished that quickly.
Awesome.
And he needs to get paid like a man should. So anyway, I'm glad we were able to squeeze this in. I want to thank Eric for kind of being flexible today. But you can follow us, obviously, all over social media. Like us on Facebook, at TortureCast, on Twitter. And, of course, Willie's coming in.
Oh, my God, seriously?
Yeah, sorry, Willie. You're going to miss it. Anyway, that's about it. At ChadK21 for myself, at 2OutHits for Eric, that's with the number 2, at Willie Dills, who had some obligations today, just missed it. But we'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about, 3 against Philadelphia, maybe 3 against LA. We'll get back to you with that schedule. And, of course, find our podcast wherever you find our podcast or your podcast, and find everything at torturecast.com. You got anything else, Eric?
Just Giants Chatter on Facebook, and I'll be a guest on a podcast. I believe it's called 108 Stitches. This guy's supposed to get in contact with me today, so we'll see what happens. So I'll share the link and whatnot if this does happen.
Awesome. All right. Well, for Willie and for Eric, this is Chad signing off, and we'll see you next week for episode 263. Until then, a boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.